Hello and welcome. Today we will be talking about Simon Lindberg. Who is Simon Lindberg? Simon Lindberg was born in Norra Åsum in 1983. He is a politician and is today the party leader of the Swedish department of the Nordic Resistance Movement. The Nordic Resistance Movement is a political party and organization who have representation in both Denmark, Sweden, Norway and Iceland. They used to also have a department in Finland until they were banned there in 2017. The core values of the party is neo-Nazism, ultranationalism, pan-Nordism, which is an ideology that wants to unify all the Nordic countries into one big country, hard Euroscepticism, which means they are very much against the EU, and homosexuality. They also deny Holocaust. Nazi support in Sweden. To understand the reason for the big Nazi support in Sweden, we have to go through Sweden's history. I'm sure you will be shocked. Sweden has always, throughout history, been a multicultural country compared to its Nordic brothers. We can see this by how they embrace their Finnish minority groups, the minority groups of Samis in northern Sweden. They also embrace other minorities by recognizing other languages like Yiddish and Romani. And today we see it by how they have welcomed a lot of refugees to Sweden. This has led to every fourth resident in the country to have an immigrant background and every third to have at least one parent born abroad. This has led to many experts to believe that race-relevant xenophobia is more likely to occur in Sweden by ethnic Swedes compared to other countries with lower percentages of immigrants living in their country. There's also many other factors experts believe are why Sweden has such a high percentage of Nazism. IKEA. The ugly truth of IKEA. Many of you probably see IKEA as a pretty innocent company, but its founder, Ingvar Kamprad, was in his 20s and 30s a member of Sweden's Nazi party, and is also said to have donated money from IKEA to a Nazi organization. This was relieved in 1998, where several people have encouraged to boycott IKEA, but this had nearly to none effect. This might also explain IKEA's branding technique, which focuses a lot on embracing classic Swedish culture in form of food and furniture design and much more. All IKEA stores are also built in the color of the Swedish flag, and they focus a lot on coming up with original Swedish names for all of their individual furniture. The history of the Nordic resistance movement. The question of Nazism in Sweden is very political and there's no one answer, but it's more a mixture of a lot of different factors. But one thing is for sure, there's always been a high number of different Nazi parties in Sweden. But many experts claim that this took a turn in 1997 with the creation of the Svenska Motståndsrörelsen, also called Swedish Resistance Movement, which advocates for neo-Nazism instead of the more traditional Nazism that happened in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. The rise of neo-Nazism was not only beginning to gain popularity in Sweden but worldwide. In 2016, Swedish Resistance Movement was renamed Nordic Resistance Movement. This was primarily due to their shift in politics. After 2016, one of their main political points was pan-Nordism, which focuses on unifying the Nordic countries under one strong state. The countries include Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, and the party has even talked about incorporating the Baltic countries of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania in the future, even though affiliates does not exist in the Baltics yet and are only limited to Scandinavia. The Nordic countries have a reputation of having a high tolerance of freedom of speech as well as a high tolerance of freedom of the press. This is secured by each country's different constitutions, but how far should each country let their people express themselves if it is on other expenses, both in the form of being violated and economically? In October 2017, Simon Lindberg led a demonstration in the second biggest city in Sweden, Gothenburg, in form of a Nazi parade with over 500 people demonstrating with Simon and hailing Hitler. This led to another demonstration with people demonstrating against the first demonstration. This led to a lot of police needed to be summoned from all over the country to bring peace on both sides. The authorities claim to have spent more than 3 million euros on peacekeeping in the form of police wages. In Denmark, Rasmus Paludan, who some claim to have very similar beliefs as Simon Lindberg, has also spent more than 15 million euros on demonstrating, also in the form of just police wages. This has very fast been very politicalized with arguments on both sides for if these demonstrations are really necessary. Some will argue that these demonstrations are a crucial part of a democracy because everybody has a right to express their opinion and be protected while doing it, while others argue that they are too extreme to be needing protection and that the money could be spent on other important stuff like education and welfare. But is it justifiable? While many of these right-wing extremists have different ways of justification for their political extremism, Simon Lindberg's is to preserve his beloved Aryan race, just like Hitler. He says several times that his race is under attack and he just acts upon it. With the Aryan race going into a more and more globalizing world, more and more people marry people from other races, which leads to a more diverse ethnic population. So is this ultranationalism like we saw in Hitler's Germany, like they're described as by the media? This is also a very political question. Is it nationalistic to want to have an ethnostate where all people in the country is from the same ethnicity? But many people are being heavily criticized when talking about wanting an ethnostate. But in some countries like Japan and Israel, ethnostate is a very well-decided thing in their society, even with politicians who wouldn't be classified as nationalistic, voting for harder immigration laws. So what is nationalism even? And is it a bad thing? Many progressive politicians connect the word nationalism with a bad thing in Sweden. But when is nationalism really bad? Does that mean people cheering for their national team in sports are bad people? Simon Lindberg has started a very political debate about this exact subject in Swedish politics. As said before, Sweden has a long history of being a multicultural country, and many politicians connect this idea with a very positive thing. But what is multiculturalism really? And isn't Simon Lindberg also a multiculturalist if he believes he wants to unify the cultures of both Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, and possibly the Baltics? That's a lot of cultures in one society. So why do we still see this form of multiculturalism as a bad thing? Is it because some cultures are excluded from the society Simon Lindberg is dreaming of? Many right-wing extremists would argue that we simply cannot let some cultures into ours because it would destroy it in the long run. But is there any evidence for this, or is it just Simon Lindberg being nationalistic again? In Denmark, a survey asked Muslims if they would prefer Sharia law or the Danish constitution as their fundamental law system. Sharia is a system where the laws are based on the Quran and its teachings. All Sharia-based systems today are authoritarian and don't believe in human rights and are therefore by some people seen as the opposite of a democracy and the systems implemented in the Scandinavian countries. In the survey, 50% of Muslims said that they would prefer Sharia over the Danish constitution, which led a lot of people to want to minimalize the immigration from more Muslim based countries. This is also part of the big rise of anti Islam ideology, which also has been more and more common ideology and goes well in hand with the right wing extremists that we see today. Many politicians just see this as failed integration into the Danish society, while others believe that all true believing Muslims prefer Sharia over modern constitutions. This is the most fundamental belief to why some people don't want two different cultures into their own, because they would work and promote beliefs against their own country system. Does that make it fair to be less open about immigration because some immigrants would want to undermine the current system? That is one of the core reasons that has led Simon Lindberg to be less open about other cultures than his own. Thanks for watching.